I learned the hard way that theft doesn't always happen in the dark. Sometimes it happens under fluorescent office lights, in a conference room with a stale coffee smell, while your boss smiles and tells you there just wasn't budget for the bonus you earned, right before he shows off a brand new watch. If you've ever felt small, betrayed, or gaslit at work, lean in. Because when my boss stole my bonus, I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I flipped one clause, one quiet line in a license, and watched their entire analytics operation go silent. He stole my bonus, then bragged about his numbers that I'd built. So I triggered a single license clause. At 10 a.m. sharp, their dashboards went black. Phones rang. Investors waited, and my boss learned exactly what non-payment means. If stories where justice actually lands hit your soul, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I tell true lived-in revenge stories that start with disrespect and end with spine-straightening payback. Drop a comment if you've ever been robbed at work. We might make your story next. The analytics room always smelled like burnt dust and stale coffee, no matter how often I cracked the windows. A strip of humming servers lived behind frosted glass, blue LEDs blinking like lazy fireflies. Those were my lights, my pipelines. My late nights, I was the analytics lead at a growth-obsessed SaaS company called Betrayal. We sold customer intelligence to mid-market brands, aka dashboards and predictions that made confused execs feel like fortune tellers. On paper, I was a mid-level data engineer. In reality, I was the beginning, middle, and end of every metric our CEO bragged about. My boss, Evan, was the VP of growth. Immaculate hair, curated stubble, a vocabulary of optimize, synergy, and double-click used like punctuation. He called himself the architect, even though the only thing he ever built was a slide deck. I came to Betrayal after 3 years of freelancing through my small LLC Atlas Bridge. I had written a custom connector that ingested messy spreadsheets, CRM exports, ad platform data, and made them play nice. Atlas Bridge was my baby. I licensed it to Betrayal when I joined full-time. A simple agreement that paid a monthly fee to my LLC for the connector's maintenance and usage, plus a performance bonus if growth targets were hit. Clause 8.2 was the one that mattered, and back then, felt like overkill. Vendor may terminate and revoke access upon non-payment after a 15-day cure period. I never thought I'd need it. Spring was a furnace of deadlines. The board wanted ARR growth. The CEO wanted a North Star dashboard he could show in investor calls. My connector ingested ad spends, churn curves, trial activations, feature usage. I built a new attribution model that actually made sense. The numbers sang. Evan took credit in every meeting, but I told myself I didn't care. I had an offer letter that promised a 20% performance bonus if we hit a target number of qualified conversions by June. We hit it by May 28th. I slept that night like a human for the first time in months. The next day, I wore a clean shirt to work and finally asked HR about the bonus. They smiled, told me it would be reflected in my June paycheck. I could already feel the relief bleeding into my shoulders. Credit card debt down, breathing room up. June arrived. My paycheck did not have the bonus. I stared at the direct deposit screen like the numbers might rearrange themselves if I blinked hard enough. They didn't. I walked into HR. "We're so sorry for the delay. CFO has to approve," they said. I sent a respectful email to the CFO and CC'd Evan. No reply. Another email, more polite than my frustration deserved. Another silence, then the all hands. Evan took the stage in his trademark black tee and smiled like a billboard. He clicked to a slide full of charts I'd built. "Team, we crushed it," he said, laser pointer dancing. "I'm proud of our strategic direction. Our analytics stack changes the game." People clapped. I clapped too. The clapping felt like sand. Afterward, he cornered me by the coffee machine. "Hey, superstar," he said, voice warm, hand on my shoulder. "Small update. There's a budget freeze for bonuses this quarter." You know how it is. My brain didn't process the words at first. Budget freeze. This quarter. My stomach sank. "But the offer letter," I started. He cut me off. "Company needs come first. We'll make it up to you. Meanwhile, your work put us on the map." He lifted his drink and a gold watch flashed under the fluorescent lights. New, bright, compensatory. On the whiteboard behind him, someone had left a smiley face and the words, "We win." I stared at my hollow reflection in the coffee urn and felt my jaw tightening until it clicked. It wasn't about the money alone. It was the dismissal, the erasure, the way he exhaled the word we, like we, meant him, and my midnight debug sessions were a footnote. I went home that night with my laptop in my bag and a silent buzzing in my chest. Anger is a quiet motor when you have a mortgage. You drive home, you reheat leftovers, you call your mom, you pretend your voice isn't tight, you say you're okay. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan. The room smelled like detergent, faint citrus. I counted the rotations. 52, 53. At 54, my mind finally stopped replaying his watch and drifted to something else. A PDF on my desktop. Atlas Bridge License, Ravel PDF Clause 8.2, non-payment, termination rights. I wasn't ready to move, but the thought settled in the dark like a spare key on the nightstand. The email landed at 7:12 a.m., the time when the office still smelled like cleaning solution and the sun struck the east windows like a flashlight. It was from the CFO to HR. Per Evan, hold vendor payouts this month. Reclassify bonus as discretionary. We need runway optics. I was CC'd by mistake. My name nested inside a group alias. I read it 3 times. Vendor payouts. That meant my Atlas Bridge fee, the small monthly retainer to my LLC. Reclassify bonus as discretionary meant pretend this wasn't promised. The rage rose hot, then icy. My fingers trembled. I took a breath so deep my ribs ticked. Then forwarded the email chain to my personal account with a subject line that made me smirk despite everything. Optics. I walked into Evan's glass cube with the energy of a person who's counted to 10, then 20. He was pouring almond milk into his coffee, that watch a little halo catching the morning. I kept my tone even. My heart was sprinting. Hey, quick one, I said. My bonus didn't show, and the license payout to Atlas Bridge is on hold. What's going on? He smiled without teeth. I told you, budget freeze. I had to make tough calls. We're all tightening belts. You tightened yours around my neck, I wanted to say. Instead, I chose, the bonus was in my offer letter. He shrugged. Offer letters aren't the Bible. We're in a different market. Then with a fatherly sigh, don't be naive. Ride the wave. Your work is seen. Seen, that word again. I saw how his shoulders relaxed when he thought he'd closed the topic. I saw the tiny nick on the bezel of his watch. I saw an exit sign reflect off the glass behind him. And in my own reflection, I saw a person collapsing into compliance. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. HR was sugar polite and useless. The CFO's assistant promised to review the situation. My inbox filled with nothing. My Slack DMs filled with, hey, can you just... requests that assumed I'd continue to produce the magic. I kept working. Bills do not care about your principles. I kept the pipelines alive, fixed a gnarly dedupe issue, trained a junior analyst, smiled in stand-ups, pretended I wasn't watching my own spine bow. At night, the ceiling fan. The citrus detergent. The counting. I started looking like someone else in the mirror, a person who swallowed insults until their voice learned to be quiet. I tried once to move on quietly. I updated my resume and sent it to 3 companies. No time to interview, those weeks were clamps. Ravel was prepping for a big investor meeting, and my dashboards were the stage. Evan hovered more than usual, asking loaded questions that sounded like ownership grabs. So just to be clear, your connector is part of our core IP now, right? I kept my answers careful. Atlas Bridge is licensed to Ravel via my LLC, as you know. He waved it off, eyes already over my shoulder. Right, but it's basically ours. Inside my head. Not how any of this works. The investor meeting date got set. July 15th, 10 a.m. A demo of our unparalleled data visibility, as the CEO wrote in the invite. The board would be there. 2 potential strategic partners would dial in. Evan rehearsed his speech in the conference room, voice buttery through the glass. I checked my invoicing app. The Atlas Bridge payment was 32 days overdue. I checked my Dunning emails. 2 reminders sent. 1 read, no reply. I opened the license document again. There it was. Clause 8.2, non-payment after 15 days. Vendor may revoke access until account is current. I scrolled to the second paragraph. Vendor shall provide 7 days notice prior to termination unless fraud or unauthorized sublicensing is detected. In such cases, immediate termination may occur. Unauthorized sublicensing. My cursor hovered. I thought about the sister brand Evan bragged about onboarding last week. I checked logs. New API keys had been provisioned for a separate domain that wasn't on our license. He'd spun up a mirror of our stack for another entity without telling me, using my connector. There it was. The line that changes a story. I took screenshots. I exported logs. I zipped everything to a dated folder and sent it to my personal email, then to a cloud folder my friend, a lawyer, had access to. Her name is Priyanka, and she's the one who taught me to never rely on should when shall is in writing. That night, I called her from my car in a grocery store parking lot. Rain ticked on the windshield. I told her the whole thing, my voice wobbling between fury and shame that I'd let it go this far. She was quiet, then she said, "Okay, first, breathe. Second, don't touch anything you don't have the right to touch. Third, your license is explicit. They're in breach on 2 counts, non-payment and unauthorized sublicensing." "I don't want to be a villain," I said. "You're not," she said. "You're the vendor. You get to turn off your product when it's stolen." I slept better that night. Not because the problem was solved, but because the floor under me felt solid again. I made a list in the morning. Send formal notice of breach for non-payment and unauthorized sublicensing. With 7 days to cure. Prepare revocation mechanism for 10 a.m. on July 15th. An automated license check that returns. 402 payment required to the connector. If status is unpaid or unlicensed domain detected. Document everything. Keep every receipt. Keep my hands clean. I sent the breach notice from my LLC email at 9:03 a.m. The subject line was boring on purpose. Atlas Bridge License. Notice of breach and cure period. The body was drier than dust. Dates, invoice numbers, contract citations. I CC'd the CFO and Legal Iravel. I CC'd myself. I CC'd the version of me that had swallowed 100 small humiliations and deserved to see me do this right. Within 5 minutes, Evan DM'd me on Slack. "Why are you making this a thing?" He wrote, "We said we'd sort it out." I typed, deleted, typed again. Then, "As vendor, I'm following the license agreement. Please direct payment questions to Accounting Atlas Bridge." He reacted with the rolling eyes emoji. I watched the tiny cartoon eyes spin another circle around my patience and felt something click into place. My heart slowed. My hand stopped shaking. 7 days crawled by. CFO replied on day 5. "We're routing payment. Need more time." I extended the cure period by 2 days in writing to be generous. On day 7 plus 2, nothing. On day 9, Evan stuck his head into my cube in front of the team and said, "So, we're good for the demo, right?" That same sugary tone. That same assumption. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "We'll be good when the account is current." 2 analysts nearby went still. Evan's smile cooled. "Don't be dramatic," he said. "Be a team player." Inside, something that had been bending for months finally felt upright. If you've never set a kill switch on something you built, it feels exactly like standing in your own house and choosing which lights to turn off, room by room, with intention. It is power, yes, but it's also stewardship. It's saying, "This is mine, and I gave it to you under terms. Respect them." I spent the day before the demo not gloating, not rubbing my hands, but triple-checking the boundaries. I pulled the code and stared at the license verification call, a lightweight ping that checked the status flag in Atlas Bridge's license server. If active, pass. If suspended, return a 402 and a JSON message with a support link. The connector would then stop ingesting. The transformation job would halt. And the dashboards would surface data source unavailable messages. I set the status to suspended in our staging environment. The test suite whirred. Messages bubbled up exactly as designed. No data corrupted, nothing deleted, everything reversible upon payment. My heart thudded a calm drum in my chest. I am not breaking anything. I am enforcing a contract. At 6:40 p.m., my phone buzzed. The CFO. "Can we talk?" I answered. Her voice was smooth, a practiced calm. "We're in a cash timing crunch," she said. "We'll make you whole after the demo." I stared out the window at the city bruising into dusk. "The license has been in breach for 30-plus days," I said. "You have my notice in writing. I already extended the cure period. I can't extend it again." "You'd jeopardize the company over a few $1,000s?" she asked, gentle steel underneath. I swallowed. You jeopardized the company when you moved vendor payouts to optics and let an exec spin up unauthorized instances of my software. Silence. Then a sigh. We'll do our best. He wants me to be the villain, I told my ceiling fan later, smiling at the absurdity. No, I'm just the narrator. At 8:12 p.m., Evan texted me a selfie from a wine bar, 2 founders and a sales director in frame, all teeth. Pre-game, the message read. Don't screw this up. I took a screenshot and saved it in the folder with the others. Then I called Priyanka to confirm timing. You're clean, she said. Send a final notice in the morning at 9 a.m. that service will be suspended at 10 a.m. unless payment is received. Keep it clinical. At 10:31 p.m., I drafted my resignation letter. It was not some screaming manifesto. It was 6 sentences long, grateful for opportunities, effective immediately upon receipt of my bonus and vendor payments. Access to Atlas Bridge will be restored when the account is current. Attached, a summary of outstanding invoices with late fees per the contract. I slept like a stone dropped in a well. Morning. The office buzzed with too bright energy. People had demo day voices, higher, faster. One of the analysts had brought donuts, the sugary smell fighting the stale coffee smell in a battle of the beige. Evan wore his black tee, the watch, and a grin. I sent the 9 a.m. notice. Subject, final notice. Service suspension at 10 Dowse. If account not current. Body, dates, totals, links to pay, the clause. CC CFO CEO legal. BCC, my cloud folder. At 9:07, Evan pinged me. LOL service suspension? This is internal. Chill. I typed slower this time. Atlas Bridge is a licensed external product. My legal counsel advises me to adhere to the agreement. You have legal counsel now? He wrote. I could feel the sneer even through text. Wise people have friends, I replied, then closed Slack and put my phone face down for my own heartbeat. At 9:22, the CFO replied to my email. We're initiating a wire at 9:30 a.m. Please allow an exception for the demo. I checked my bank portal. No incoming. I replied, happy to restore access immediately upon receipt of funds. As you know, your breach also includes unauthorized sublicensing. Please confirm you've decommissioned the sister instance as part of Cure. 41 a.m. Evan stood outside the conference room hyping up the team, his voice a metronome. We are the future, he said. We own our data. Someone laughed too. Loud on 46 a.m. My bank portal remained. Quiet 9:52 a.m. The CEO walked into the conference room with the swagger of a person who genuinely believed everything would work out because it always had. He clapped me on the back. My analytics wizard, he said. You ready? I'm ready when finance is, I said. He blinked. Finance? I pointed to my laptop. We're in breach? I've sent notices, he stared. A flicker passed over his face, a tiny crack in the confident glaze. Fix it, he said. Not a request. A command. I looked at him and thought of every night I stayed when the cleaning crew vacuumed around my shoes. Every time I was told we'd circle back about compensation. Every meeting where someone else introduced my work like a prop. Then I looked down at my contract. I'll restore access as soon as we're current, I said. My voice was steady. It surprised me. It sounded like a person who remembered they had a spine. A junior PM hustled over. They're on Zoom, she whispered, eyes wide. Partners are here. Evan's grin tightened at the edges, but he kept it casual. Let's go, he said, ushering people in. The analysts arranged themselves at the back like chorus members. I took my seat at the console. The room smelled like fear now, or maybe I was just finally naming that stale coffee smell. 58 a.m., I hit one key. The license status flag shifted from active to suspended. My connector did exactly what it was designed to do. Ping, check, respond. The dashboards didn't crash dramatically. They just lost their heartbeat. At 9:59, I felt my phone vibrate with an incoming call from a number I recognized as the bank. I let it go to voicemail. The lights hummed. The fan in the ceiling clicked. My heart was steady like a drumline. Silence is loud when it's the wrong kind. The kind that says the thing you thought would make you look powerful just made you look naked. At 10:01, Evan still had his hand outstretched in this grand gesture toward the screen, like a magician revealing a dove. The dove was a 402 error. The room went so still I could hear the tiny squeak of someone's chair. On Zoom, a partner's face twitched into confusion. Are we seeing this?" he asked, tinny through the speakers. Evan laughed first because laughter is the socially acceptable way to push your panic back into its crate. "Looks like a refresh issue," he said. "We've been doing some upgrades." He looked at me. The look wasn't a question. It was a command dressed as a question. "Fix it." I didn't move. "Our license is suspended due to non-payment and unauthorized use," I said, calm like announcing the weather. "You have my notices." The CEO's face flushed a shade I had only seen on graphs. "What do you mean, unauthorized?" I kept my eyes on the CTO, the only person in the room who understood how wires turned into numbers. "There are logs of a second instance using my software without a license," I said. "I sent a summary last night." On Zoom, one of the partners leaned forward until his nose nearly touched his webcam. "Are you telling us your vendor can turn off your core analytics during a demo?" he asked. It came out like he was asking if they'd just now discovered gravity. The CEO lifted a hand. "We're resolving this," he said, slicing the air. "To me, turn it back on." "I will when the account is current," I said. "It's instant on receipt of funds." "You have the link." The CFO whispered something to the CEO, her spreadsheet voice somehow audible in the hush. Evan's jaw muscles were working like a guy chewing nails. His smile was gone. He still showed his teeth. "Everyone take 5, the CEO said to the Zoom squares, voice strained pleasant. The screen filled with pause emojis as faces blinked away. The room's temperature seemed to jump 5 degrees. Evan turned to me, hissed, "You're blowing up months of work because you're petty." Every neuron in my body wanted to flinch, to defend, to explain. Instead, I let the quiet do the talking for a beat. Then, "You stole my bonus. You stopped paying my license. You spun up an unlicensed copy. I gave you multiple chances to fix it. This is not petty. This is boundaries." The words felt like water after a drought. The CFO's phone buzzed. She glanced down. "Wire is pending," she said. "Bank says 30 minutes. "Terrific," I said. "I'll turn it back on when it lands." Evan took a step closer, that watch now a nonsense son. "You realize you're done here," he said low. "Like career-wise." I almost laughed. I thought about the 3 job postings in my inbox from recruiters who had been at our last conference, who had literally watched Evan present my work and then asked me questions afterward because I was the one who could answer them. I thought about Priyanka telling me, "Truth is a better reference than fear." Then I thought about my mom, about the relief on her face when I told her I'd finally be able to help her with the dental surgery, about the way that promise had pressed on my chest every time Ravel delayed payment. "I'm aware of the consequences," I said. "Are you?" The CEO returned to the table with a smile so forced it squeaked. "Let's talk options," he said. "We could compromise. Restore service now and we'll make you whole by end of day. We'll also revisit your compensation." I looked at the CFO. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I considered how often end of day had stretched into end of quarter. "Funds first," I said. 2 a.m. My phone buzzed. Payment received. A clean lump. The message from the bank app was mundane. My shoulders loosened like someone had untied a knot in the middle of my back. "Great," I said. I toggled the license status back to active. The dashboards blinked back to life, lines and bars and confidence intervals filling the screen like lungs reinflating. The room exhaled as if we'd all been underwater. On Zoom, the partners reappeared. The CEO gave them a showman's smile. "Minor hiccup," he said. As I was saying, they demoed. Evan spoke like a wind-up toy that had regained power, voice too bright. When the call ended, applause shot out like nervous fireworks. Then the fallout began. The CEO asked me to stay. Evan stayed too, arms crossed to hold himself together. The CFO stood behind them like a crestfallen statue. The CEO's voice went low. "What you did was reckless," he said. "You embarrassed the company." "What you did was illegal," I said. "You breached contract. You appropriated my work. You threatened my job when I enforced terms." I slid a folder across the table. It contained the license, the notices, screenshots, logs, and a timeline with dates and CCs and read receipts. Priyanka had suggested the tabs. The tabs were satisfying. The CEO flipped through it, frown deepening into something more complicated than anger. The CFO spoke first. "We shouldn't have reclassified the bonus," she said. That's on me, Evan scoffed. You're seriously taking his side? The CTO cleared his throat. It was the first time he'd spoken. We use software we didn't pay for, he said, each word a measured brick. We created a second instance without a license. If a vendor did that to us, we'd burn them down. Silence. Then the CEO's face rearranged itself into corporate regret. We'll make this right, he said. We'll pay what we owe, plus late fees, and we'll review internal decisions. His eyes flicked to Evan. It was a small flicker, but it was a crack that let light in. I appreciate that, I said. I'll send a final statement today. I stood. Evan couldn't help himself. You're finished here, he said again, but there was a wobble in it now. You think anyone will hire someone who nukes their company during a demo? I picked up my laptop. Someone who enforces contracts and keeps receipts? I said. Yeah, I think they will. I walked out through the aisle of desks. People had their eyes glued to screens. The universal posture of, I saw everything but I'm not here. One of the analysts caught my eye, gave me a tiny nod, the kind of nod you give someone who finally did the thing you daydream about doing. I didn't slam the door. I didn't flip a desk. I dropped my badge into the metal tray at reception, and it made a small, satisfying clink. That afternoon, HR sent me a mutual separation agreement with a gag clause. I edited it, removed the gag, added a line about non-disparagement being mutual and not limiting factual statements about contract enforcement, and returned it with Priyanka's tracked changes. They accepted. The deposit hit my account, bonus, license fees, late fees. It was not life-changing money, but it was mine. All of it. 2 weeks later, a recruiter reached out. Heard what happened at Ravel, he said on the call, carefully neutral. We need someone who can build, sure, but we also need someone who knows how to draw boundaries. I laughed. I have experience in that. He lowered his voice. Also, small world, the VP of growth at Ravel, Evan, right? Is no longer with the company. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Consequences are sometimes quiet. Knee-jerk revenge wants spectacle. Grown-up revenge wants closure. Release. The night I signed my new offer, I sat under the ceiling fan and let it hum me to sleep. Not because I'd won, because I'd finally stopped lying to myself that being a team player meant being a doormat. When someone steals from you at work, your money, your credit, your boundaries, the insult isn't just in the theft. It's in the expectation that you'll swallow it, that you'll shoulder the shame, that you'll contort yourself into gratitude for the opportunity to be exploited. The revenge everyone remembers is the screen going black at 10 times a.m., the license clause firing like a tripwire, the VP's grin cracking in real time. That moment was clean, cinematic, but the real revenge happened in the weeks before, when I decided to stop treating my work like a favor and start treating it like a product. When I read the contract I'd signed with the same seriousness that the company read theirs. When I understood that a boundary is not a threat, it's a safety rail. For both of us, I didn't hack anything. I didn't sabotage a company. I refused to let a company use my software while ignoring the agreement that gave them that right. It was basic. It was boring. It was beautiful. If you're listening to this and you feel tired in your bones because some Evan in your life keeps telling you to be a team player, here's your permission slip. Read your contract. Keep your receipts. Get a friend who reads legalese. Don't confuse politeness with consent. And remember, there's nothing petty about upholding the terms that let you do your best work. The dashboards came back on. The world did not end, but a habit ended. Mine. And that is a kind of ending you can build a life on. If this hit close to home, tell me about your Clause 8.2 moment in the comments. What boundary did you finally enforce? Like, subscribe, and share this with the friend who needs to hear it. New stories of quiet, lawful revenge drop every week. Your spine is welcome here.